You all see me? What do you see when you look at me? It's a simple question. What do you see when you look at me? When you see this lovely human in front of you right now or on the screen that you're watching this somewhere, what do you see? Do you see a drag queen wearing too much makeup, or maybe an actor pretending to be something they're not? A punchline, a problem, a fetish object? What does this body make you feel? Stress? Anger? Confusion? It's a harder question than it seems. And 30 years ago, when I was known as Patrick, son of Carrie and Mark, I'm not sure I could have given you an answer for what you're looking at right now. And if you are watching this right now, and you're in this space with me, and you are made uncomfortable by this presence, I want you to sit with that discomfort for a second, and I want you to honor it. Because one of the things that I wanted to do today is make this a little bit less weird for the people in the room and the people watching at home, and give you a context for what you're looking at. So again, to the people who are watching live around the world and the tens of people who will watch this online in perpetuity, what do you see when you see me? Well, here's one answer. You see Pella. I'm more than an image on a screen. I'm a real human being, and I'm not an actor, although I used to be. As a child, I was very awkward, but you couldn't shut me up, surprise, surprise. So eventually, my parents found me a hobby where they could get other people to listen to me talk. And I got to say amazing things written by amazing people on some of the coolest stages on earth. And the best part was, I didn't even have to come up with my own lines. They wrote my lines for me too, and they gave me my costumes, and I wore it, and I played my role. But I don't do it anymore. I play a lot of other roles in my life. Over my life, I've played the role of teacher, actor, preacher, poet, even stand-up comedian. But the role that I am most proud to play for you today is the role of woman. Hi, my name is Pella Felton. I use she, they pronouns, and this is Transphylogeny. How many of you have heard the word Transphylogeny before? Yes, but that's because I told you about it already. I made this word up about a year ago as a hashtag for the selfies on my Instagram. So Transphylogeny is the affirmation and normalization of trans femininity as womanhood. It's also the discursive practices through which trans women become legible as women. And it comes from classic Greek and Latin. The prefix trans means to come across, beyond or on the other side of, and the prefix philo means from the Greek word philos, although on the teleprompter it says phils, so I just want to point out that Transphylogeny is also phils, which means loving and fond of. We love you, Phil, I don't know who you are. And the suffix gyne, which means the Greek word gyne, which means woman or female. So combining these three, I brought all three of these ideas together because I wanted a word to give value and respect to humans who transition into the role of womanhood. The month that I am performing this is National Women's Month, and I wanted to honor the women like myself who came to this role after playing a different role. And then because I'm a millennial, I started immediately posting about it to Instagram. So every Thursday, I started posting selfies of myself to Instagram, that's what a selfie is, along with the definition of transphylogeny that I just shared with you. I usually dress up in some of my favorite outfits, put on some makeup or not, go somewhere really pretty, and then post a picture. And I've been doing that for about a year under the hashtag Transphylogeny Thursday. It hasn't taken over the world or anything, and I'm fine with that. But every Thursday, my friends, my family, and those I choose to associate with have the honor of seeing me as I see me. And Transphylogeny then has become the lens through which I have made myself known to the people that I love. By giving you this word, I'm giving you a guide on how to interface with me and with other human beings. And maybe by doing this, I'm even giving other people that are watching this a new way to flip the scripts on their own lives. That's it, that's the whole talk. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. No, there's actually more, no. But if there wasn't, that's a good talk, right? I'm proud of that talk. I'm proud to come to those conclusions because it took me 36 years to figure that stuff out. Think of all the years I lost of not knowing myself. So I'm giving you this word so that you can know this now. This word, say it with me, Transphylogeny. Excellent. But before I give it to you, I need to give you a couple other words first. So scientists and physicians have been delineating sex and gender for decades. This is not new. In 2001, the Institute of Medicine found that there were some biological differences between how male and female patients should be treated, but significantly sociocultural and philosophical factors played an incredibly important role in determining proper health care of patients. This is 23 years ago. As a consequence, the IOM advises the use of the words sex and gender to differentiate between these areas of investigation. Sex should be used as a classification according to the reproductive organs and chromosomal functions, whereas gender should be used to refer to a person's self-representation, how that person is responded to in their social institutions based on their gender presentation. And if that sounds a little intimidating, I have another way to think about it. I like going to the movies. So imagine you're at the movies, right? And there's a big screen in the front of the auditorium, like that screen over there, right? And so that screen is built to specifications. And that's not to say there aren't other screens out there, right? All screens are valid, but the one that you're looking at now, the one that has the image on it, that has a steady impact, that has a steady makeup, until the movie comes on, and suddenly there are images projected onto that screen. And those images can be literally anything because the image is not the same as the screen that it is projected on, right? And sex and gender are kind of the same way. Our sex is like the screen. We are born with it, then the gender ideologies that are projected onto our body come later. Our race, our gender, our social class, whether or not we come from quote-unquote high-quality families. And the totality of these identities that are projected onto us become the self. The gender philosopher Judith Butler calls gender a, quote, identity instituted through a stylized repetition of acts. At some point, all of us in this room were born. A doctor looked at us, looked down, saw something and said, it's a boy, or it's a girl, or let me get my glasses. And then we're given a name, right? We answer to that name. Then we answer to it again. Then we write the name down. Then that name becomes us. We are labeled boy or girl, and even before we realize it, we are performing gender. I am not boy. I was assigned boy. Like a role in a play. I performed it, I lived it, I acted the script I was given. I wasn't very good in the role, but I only accepted that role because I didn't know there were any other roles available to me. And that's because the words we use shape how we perceive our lives and ourselves and the cultural realities around us. Neuroscientist Lyra Boroditsky argues that the way we frame and talk about something can drastically change our perspective. Boroditsky notes that by choosing how we frame and talk about something, we cue others on how to think about it. If a word, quote, like transgender is never mentioned, or categories like race or gender are never recorded in official documents, then you can never have data of how services, violences, social ills, or outcomes are distributed across those groups. But what happens when you come face to face with those things you don't have data for? What happens when something that defies your reality looks you in the eye? We see this thing, we can't explain it, so it becomes a threat. And we see something as a threat, it brings up our fight or flight instincts. That's part of being human. And it challenges our reality like a glitch in the matrix. And because we don't have a linguistic context for it, we project those narratives onto it. We fear it. We marginalize it. We legislate it out of existence if we can. And that negative thought, which started out as a small discomfort with the body, becomes an ideology, a prism through which we teach other people how to hate. 2014, I was a stand-up comedian. I was working at a comedy show. at a roadhouse in South Point, Ohio, and I remember hearing the punchline of a very, very bad joke. In this joke, a young man referred to a sex worker in an adult video by invoking a transphobic slur. And I remember being so angry, profoundly angry, disproportionately angry about this joke and not knowing why. This should not have bothered me as much as it did. I had heard much worse in that bar. And I still identified as a man. I wouldn't come to terms with my own gender identity for another 5 years. It never even occurred to me that I was insulted because I was a trans woman. How could I? I'm not that. I'm not a genre of pornography. I'm not a punchline. But when I confronted the comedian about the joke, all he had to say was, but that's what it's called. That's what the porn's called. And I think a lot about that interaction. I think about the reduction of an entire identity to a punchline, how that pushed me away from finding myself, how that suppressed something in me, pushed something deep into me so that I was not able to find it. And I get so very angry, you know? Sure, it was just a joke. But I don't care who your audience is. All comedy should be rooted in truth, and if your truth is reducing someone to your sexual gratification, I don't feel safe being around you. That isn't truth, that is slander. And I'm sick of having that lie projected onto me, especially after 38 documented murders of transgender humans were recorded in the year 2022, with 30 confirmed cases of trans women being assassinated, and I use that word intentionally. As of this speech, 6 American trans women have been killed in 2023, and there are 465 active bills in 44 state legislatures which seek to deprive transgendered persons access to basic human rights, health care, privacy, and public expression. This is not a public good. And it doesn't have to be like this. Which takes me back to transphylogeny. I coined this term a year ago because I needed a word to describe my performance. I needed a term to describe my performance of womanhood that wasn't drenched in violence, hatred, or inevitable tragedy. Because the words we had were not enough. In Whipping Girl, trans activist Julie Serrano coined the term transmisogyny to give voice to the trans women who are on a daily basis attacked, delegitimized, and stigmatized. But that word itself is rooted in the word misogyny, which is the delegitimization and hatred of all women, because it turns out the hatred to trans women is not just hatred towards trans women. Throughout history, women have been facing systematic oppression all over the world, particularly women of color. And despite all our progress, these oppressions are still happening today. By affirming trans women, we are affirming all women, particularly women of color. Transphylogeny is part of transphylogeny, because to imagine the affirmation of trans women is possible, we are taking back the right to define womanhood on our own terms. Patriarchy be damned. Transphylogeny honors the equality of all women, regardless of sex, race, age, religion, or nationality. There is a reason that Black Lives Matter movement, its mission statement explicitly affirms the lives of Black, queer, and trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. To stand against the indiscriminate erasure of Black lives, you have to stand with Kiana Stone, Unique Davis, and all the other amazing trans women of color who have been taken from us over the last 2 years by the pandemic of anti-trans violence. But that violence isn't the last scene. It can't be. I can't believe that that's how the show ends. I have to believe that this isn't our final draft. Anyone can write a tragedy. It's real easy. The real challenge is writing a future where we all just get to live our lives. We can write that, I promise you. I've started writing it already in my heart. Now, if you're waiting for the part of this story where transphylogeny goes viral and starts trending on the internet. That's not what happens next. I mean, you could. You're welcome to take what you've learned here today and go out into the world and perform transphylogeny how you see fit. I would love it if that is what you do today, because it's America. You also have the choice to not do that, ignore everything I said. I can't stop you from doing that either, and as long as you don't take away my rights, I do not care. But if you've learned anything today, I need every single person that is watching this, in this ballroom in March of 2023, those watching at home, look at me and know this: I will not be erased from this draft. You will not martyr me, because the future isn't female or male or man or woman. The future is whatever we decide we want it to be. So why not transphylogeny? Why not transphylogeny noir? Why not transphylogeny? What if the future is better for cis women and cis men and everyone? The future's possible, but you have to start by flipping the script. So now I want everyone to look back at me again, this body that you've shared this space with, and decide whether or not you can see me, if not at least as a woman, as a human. Come on. It's easy. You have the words for it now. Transphylogeny. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.